Hi, good morning. This is Dr. Pew Pew, and today we're going to be looking at the Vector Continental 1 to 10x first focal plane RAR-C reticle. So first, here's the box that it comes with, which, as you can tell, is actually pretty nice. I'm not really one to be amused by boxes, but they did a good job with this one. It kind of explains a little bit about some features here: zero stop, 93% light transparency. We'll get into that. It is waterproof to IP67 rating. Inside, I kind of took everything out already, but it does come with some scope rings. And one thing with this is the image of the scope rings show that it has kind of like this bolt pattern here, but the ones that I actually got did not. They were just a standard star hex key. But I actually kind of liked it better because they do have these recoil lugs, and I actually didn't have any issues using these. They are medium profile, so they don't work very well on like an AR. Your neck kind of gets a little bit too far down there, so I would recommend getting higher ones, but for any kind of bolt action rifle, they'll be just fine. So we're talking about the reticle. Here's a little picture of it. Basically, you got this giant EOTech-like circle. It is not 65 MOA. It is actually really large. I don't know what it is, but it is quite large, and that is going to be one of the things that we talk about a little bit later. And inside that, you kind of get this T-style point of the reticle with the Christmas tree pattern, and then it is in mils as well. So the actual optic here, so like I said, it's first focal plane. It is a 1 to 10. 1 to 10 optics in general are pretty limited in their design just because you're asking a whole lot from the optic. You're trying to take this glass and manipulate it to go from 1x all the way to 10x, which they're really a compromise style scope. They don't really do anything great in general, in my opinion. However, I was actually pretty impressed with this. I do have the throw lever on this, which you can buy. It doesn't come with the optic, but I highly recommend it for any kind of low power variable optic. But real quick on this, so this is a 34 millimeter tube. The weight comes in, it's a little bit heavy-ish for an LPVO. I think it's just shy of 23 ounces. Really with LPVOs, I mean, a lightweight one might be around like 14, 15 ounces. Standard is probably around 18, and then the heavy ones are 20 plus. This is a little more hefty, but again, it's calling it an LPVO. I know it is one, but again, we'll kind of get into it. It's a little bit more of a compromise between an LPVO and an MPVO, in my opinion, but we will get in that in a little bit. So again, 34 millimeter tube. It is construction of 6061 T6 aluminum. However, right here on your caps, these are all 7075, so they're a little bit harder material. See if you can hear this. So they do have a zero stop. You pop them up, and as you manipulate them, I don't know if you can hear that, but they are really, really good. They feel good. You can hear them perfectly fine. Tracking accuracy on it, I did not do like a formal one, but I had no issues zeroing this, and it held zero just fine. Windage is the same, kind of pops out. And again, you're just adjusting it accordingly. Feels great, tactile, audible, all that good stuff. No complaints there. Illumination knob, it goes, I think, to 11, does it? Yeah, it goes to 11 brightness. I will say it's not daylight bright, but again, that's not what the scope is for. It's not, if you want daylight bright, you have to get a fiber optic. And actually, they do make this in a fiber optic now, I believe. It is a second focal plane. This is first focal plane. And again, when it comes to like first and second focal plane, for 1 to 10x, you really need the first focal plane. Those who aren't familiar with that, basically as you zoom in, the reticle will increase in size, and as you zoom out, the reticle will kind of shrink while the second focal plane, it stays the same. Advantages on the first focal plane is that the drops on your Christmas tree style reticles are consistent at any magnification, while on the second focal plane, it only works on the maximum magnification. So I really believe this should be in that. So we kind of talked about the construction. Now, what is it like kind of being behind it? So I'll roll in like a little video, just brief, kind of shows it on 1X going through the house. And then when you look at it, as you can see, the 1X, it is very EO Tech style, but again, that circle is quite large. Reticles are kind of subjective, I like to say. In this case, I will say the whole time while I was using it, you know, I was just in my head thinking, if only we could take that big circle away and maybe make this a 2 to 10X. And I will show some photos here of what it looks like at 1X and 10X. Going out to the golf course, the house that you see in these images is about 1,000 yards away, just to kind of familiarize yourself with the distance that we're looking. But it's a pleasure to shoot with. It's very easy to get behind and look at. It's just, again, the 1X on it is good. The eye relief, I think, is pretty good. And I'll show video here too, so you can kind of get an idea of what the eye relief is like behind it. And the eye relief is, you know, I'm happy with it. I have no complaints with it. I think that it was better than what I thought it was. And from a 1 to 10X, that's, again, you're asking a lot on this. So the 1X actually did quite well. It had a little warping in it. On 10X, again, I had no trouble getting behind it. You do need a really good cheek weld on the firearm when using it on 10X. But again, if you're using it on 10X, this isn't going to be like a quick scope type shooting scenario. So just in general with that, you know, it's fine to settle down and get comfortable with it and take those longer shots. So again, why I feel this optic kind of sits between an LPVO and an MPVO. It is a really good optic overall for a DMR style rifle. I think that's kind of where this is going to sit. And the reason I say that is because when I was using it, it has a fixed parallax at 100 yards. And at close range, if you kind of bump up to about 4X, 5X, 6X, and you're looking at a 50-yard target, let's say to zero it, the image is a little blurry. And that's because you can't adjust the parallax. And not until you get to about 75 yards does that image clear up. And then once you get to about 300 yards-ish, I'd say 250, 300, then you start seeing that blur a little bit as if you would want a parallax to adjust to the range. And that's kind of my gripe about this optic is I just, like I said, if it were a 2 to 10 with a parallax, I know we would be talking about MPVO at that time, but like that's kind of where I was with it. At 1X, I felt like I just wanted to have a piggyback red dot, and at the far distances, I felt like I wanted a parallax. So any distance kind of in between that gap, fantastic. It's just, it's a 1 to 10x. So as I'm trying to push it further and further, it's still very usable. You can see the image out. Like I said, when you look at the picture that I roll in, I mean, you can see clearly the target. It's a little blurry, but you can clearly see what you're looking at. So if there was a person out there carrying a firearm or something, like you could identify a threat or a target, a deer, an elk, you could do that, no problem. It's just not as good as something that has a parallax at those ranges, if that makes sense. And on the contrary, 1x, when it comes to LPVOs, I personally, it's a hot take, prefer second focal planes. And the reason I prefer the second focal plane optic is because you actually don't need to be perfectly behind the optic at 1x. When you hit those like blacked out areas where you're not perfectly behind it, because the reticle sits on the back panel of the glass, when it's illuminated, you can actually still see it. So if you're using this on 1x, if you're not perfectly behind it and you have the illumination on, it will hide because of the first focal plane aspect. And because of that reason, running a 1 to 4, 1 to 6, sometimes to a 1 to 8, I really do prefer the second focal plane on it, just because an LPVO, in my opinion, it's supposed to be really good for medium range and a compromise up front at close range. But with the second focal planes, you kind of get, especially with fiber optics, you kind of get a red dot like feel for it, plus you get that good medium range. And that's why for me, I prefer that. Now again, this optic, it sits in between because it just doesn't quite have the parallax to give you that crisp look on the target. The glass clarity, fantastic. I mean, absolutely fantastic. Better than my Zeiss, better than my primary arm stuff. I can't talk any better about the glass. I love the glass clarity. Just at distance, I really wish I had that parallax, and then up close, it's like I almost wish, I had a red dot on top. It hits that perfect like DMR style, right? Mid-range, can go a little further, can use it up close if you need to, but it's kind of right there in that mid-range type of optic. Now comparing it to other 1 to 10s, I don't have any other 1 to 10s here currently. The only other one I've ever used is the Vortex, and I was not happy with the Vortex, and especially for the price. That optic to me, eye relief was not good. It was trash, and usability of it just wasn't for me. This, I think, performs a lot better, and at the price point, which we haven't talked about yet, sitting around that $800 to $900 range. I mean, when it comes to a 1 to 10, if you want a 1 to 10, there is no better for the price. This is hands down the best. I think you will be happy with it. Just know what you're getting involved with a 1 to 10. As long as you know what the role of this is, I think it is a very beneficial optic to own. Just please note that, you have the parallax issues with it at long range and close range, and just understand kind of what you're getting into. But if you're like, no, I have a role that's good medium to long range, maybe use all the magnification if I want. I mean, this is a very good overall package. It has advantages over an MPVO. The number one is weight. It's under 23 ounces. Most MPVOs are pretty hefty. They're 25 plus ounces. So again, that's why it sits in between. Most LPVOs are lower than 20 ounces, and MPVOs are like 25 plus. It sits right in the middle. So it is a very good compromising optic. I've been mentioning a lot with the reticle. I know reticles are more opinion based, but just to give you perspective, that big circle, it disappears as you come out to about 6x. Once you're on 6x, all you see is the T part of the reticle. You will no longer be seeing the big donut on it. But I kept saying, like, if we could get rid of the donut, keep the T, and keep it at like a 2 to 10 with the parallax, that would be my ideal world of what I look for in my shooting scenarios. Well, that would be this guy. This is their new 2 to 12. It is not offered yet on the market. The reticle, and I'll put a picture of the reticle of this now. Is that T. It is a 2 to 12, and as you can see, as a parallax. And this parallax goes all the way from, it goes from 10 yards to infinity. And I will be doing a formal review on this. Again, it is, you can see the size difference here. I mean, it is bigger. It's also 34 millimeter, but it's a little bit longer, and it is like noticeably heavier than this optic. I think you're sitting about 26 or 7 ounces. I'd have to look again on this guy. So it is noticeably heftier and larger. This to me is more of this is an MPVO. And that's kind of what I was getting at. And you can see the difference here in just size alone. So again, advantages on the 1 to 10 is it's lighter weight, it's a compromising optic. I think it serves really well as that DMR style optic. While this guy here, even though it does have a 2x feature on it, you know, piggyback red dot, this is going to be more of an MPVO. You can easily hit your shots out to about 1,000. I've not taken it there yet, but I will in the future. And I think that this is a pretty good overall medium to long range scope. But that's about all I have on this. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments. Again, it does come with scope rings, which is nice. It's perfect for bolt action kind of system because they're medium profile. Recoil lugs are great on it. I do recommend the throw lever. Very, very useful. And I'm very happy with this. I think this is a perfect optic for some of the deer hunting I do where it's a max 200 yards. LPVOs work great for that, but if you need to see 300 yards, this thing will do it no problem. And again, I shoot this on a 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't think you would ever need this on a 5.56 rifle. I think it's better for medium cartridges like 308, 6.5 because those cartridges will go a little further and the 10X on this is gonna get you there. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you. If you have any questions, like I said, just throw them in the comments and take care.